He was, and we're going to see that footage in a minute, but first we just have a clip from Padre Bergeron, who I interviewed, talking about what it means to the troops when Canadians take the time to just give them a kind word or tell them that they support them.
Very good.
Let's go to that clip.
Thank you for the support. Really appreciate the support the Canadian population has given the military. The Highway of Heroes, extremely touching for our Canadian soldiers to see how the public is supporting our Canadian military personnel. I mean, when you walk through an airport and you're in uniform and somebody comes up to you and wants to shake your hand and says thank you. Wow. I mean, 10 years ago, I'd never experienced that. You're standing in an airport and somebody says, can I buy you coffee? Simply because you're in uniform. So there is a sign of respect for the military personnel, for soldiers.
Now, Prince Charles made it up the road over 100 miles.
We got to drive out to Petawawa and see him there with Camilla, and he took the time to visit, first of all, private, where the media weren't allowed. He was visiting the families of people who've lost loved ones, which was such a, really poignant moment, I think, for so many families to have him take the time to do that. And so respectful. The media wasn't allowed. They just protected their privacy. And then, he took time to actually go among the troops, and he actually visited here his own platoon. He's Colonel-in-Chief of the Royal Canadian Dragoons. So he took time to shake their hands and encourage them, and I'm sure that just meant the world to the military, not just from far away saying that he appreciates them, but right there, person to person, face to face. He spent a few hours there.
Well, the role of the monarchy, like was pointed out earlier this week by the Honourable David Onley, Lieutenant Governor of Ontario, that in his mind it was the Queen who insisted always on greeting those that had visible physical limitations, and put the spotlight on them for the first time. And he felt that that came directly out of the fact that the Queen gave them visibility for the first time in the national media. And so the role of royalty, I think, is quite important.
When you're in leadership, everything you do is put under a spotlight, and it can have huge meaning. Earlier we were just talking a little bit about the spirituality of being on the combat field. And, I was talking to a number of people who were telling me that since we've changed to a combat role in Afghanistan, they've really seen an unprecedented spiritual hunger among the troops, which is so interesting, because I think really, we don't think about that when we're thinking about the political world, but God's doing something in the hearts of military personnel, soldiers, Navy, Air Force personnel. And I actually have a clip here as well, talking to a Brigadier General and Padre Bergeron one more time, who just had some really neat things to say about that. Let's go to it.
Do you know, I've never seen so many New Testament, not New Testaments, but full Bibles given as much as I did in Afghanistan. We gave out cases and cases and cases of Bibles. And not because we were saying, do you want a Bible, but because soldiers were saying, do you have a Bible? I've been in the military 14 years. I hadn't seen that before Afghanistan, so I'd say, yeah, there is a hunger that's different.
Because you're facing the very inside of you that is the darkest and the most unknown and the most fearful. And it's in times like that when we realize that in this world, maybe I just can't do it by myself. And that they realize that there is God. And they start to probe questions and into issues that they have not, first of all, they have time to do it, to waste on their cycle, but secondly, they have the actual exposure to do that. And it does, and all of a sudden people become more aware of what is more important in their life. They see the devastation, they see the hurt, they see the destruction that takes place, and then they see what can happen. And they realize when they have around them people who are supporting them and praying for them, it makes a difference in their lives.
It really, really is important, and it does make such a difference. And there are people watching right now who are hurting in various ways, and there are prayer lines available from time to time throughout this hour. People would just love to pray with you if you want to call. But this is important, this emphasis.
Yeah, military families and military personnel are really hurting. Combat roles, like you saw your dad live through the war. It does change people. And so you have the family at home trying to go on without the spouse or the father, as you experienced.
Yeah, well, of course I did. That was First World War.
Right, so you weren't.
I wasn't born till 36, and that was 1914, 1918.
That's right. But he must have had some of the
He was 18
effects.
years old in 1914.
But the war affects people. Like they say, every mission you come back changed. You never are the same. Doesn't matter if you've been on the battlefield, you know, 5 times. Every mission is unique and every mission changes you. And then you've got the families back home trying to soldier on. We have a clip actually now from Lenore, who's a military wife, just telling some of those challenges. And Rob Parker from the National House of Prayer, you know, they pray for government 24 hours a day, all year. And he talks a little bit too about the importance of praying for our military. So let's see what they have to say.
When your husband is away, the family becomes a unit with one less member. And so all the activities continue, the hockey games, the choir practices, everything, without the dad. And the mom generally, or the dad, because we also have women in the military, becomes the spouse that is left behind, becomes the sole provider of that care for the family. And so the family adjusts to that new routine. And when the military member that is deployed comes back home, the family has to readjust to that. And many times our military members have suffered from operational stress injuries. And they go through a period where they will have nightmares, and they are processing all that they have lived, and they turn inwards, and that is a difficult time for any marriage. But I tell you, with God, there is a third player in your marriage, and everything changes. And the role of the church is to help. I truly believe I couldn't do it without the help of my church.
You know, for me, that became really personal in praying for military when, you know, in all our scheduling, all our busyness and praying for government, that became interrupted when I sat across the table from a former brigadier general. And with tears in his eyes, he said to me, our young men, our young women are not being covered in prayer. Can you help us raise up the profile of praying for military across this nation? And it hit me so hard. You know, I realized I have not been praying for the military. You know, and sometimes people say, well, I don't really want to pray for military because I don't even agree with what's going on in Afghanistan. And to me, it's not even about that. It's simply, these are our young men, our young women. They're doing what they feel is right. They're seeking to represent us in a foreign country. And some of them are paying the ultimate sacrifice by laying down their lives, and they need our prayer.
You know, David, I love what he says, that, you know, whether or not you agree with the war or not, that we need to support and pray for our troops. And I'm actually going to do a full report on this with these interviews coming up in January, so there's more to come.
Thank you very much, Cheryl, for your work, long hours, flying back in the wee hours to be with us.